I'm Suzanne Kosmas. I'm the congressperson from Florida's 24th Congressional District. It's really great to see you all here this morning, all these smiling and energetic faces of those of you who are here as part of the Lou Frey Institute, designed, as you know, to encourage your interest in public service. Now, I've lived 37 years in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, where I raised my family of 4, was very actively engaged in my community, owned and operated a small business, and got into politics as a result of that activity in my community. So I didn't start out deciding I wanted to be a politician. I started out deciding I wanted to improve the quality of life for people in my community, and I did that in a number of different ways. And so my experience led me to 8 years in Tallahassee. Then I was term limited out, and I went home and hadn't intended to run for office again. But many things disturbed me about the way things were going in this country, and so I decided to jump back into politics and try to extend my public service by serving this community, Florida's 24th Congressional District. And I've been doing that now for about 20 months. Now, today's program, as you well know, is about the space program. And as a resident of New Smyrna Beach for the last 37 years, I like to say I live about 30 miles up the river from Kennedy Space Center, and that as a mom and a business owner, we have observed the space program from every conceivable surface, whether it's the roof of a house, the roof of a car, a boat, the beach, you name it, and we've witnessed a shuttle launch over the last 30 years from one of those surfaces. Now, as a congressperson, we are approaching what we know is going to be the transition from that shuttle program to the next phase of space exploration. So every day in the last 20 months since I've been serving, I have attempted to find ways in which we could do a couple of different things. Number one, that we can ensure that America remains a leader in manned space exploration around the world. And this is a very important thing for us to do. Those of you who have interest in space exploration or any area of the sciences know that this is an inspiration for people who are interested in what we think will be the 4 most important components for the 21st century economy of this country and for us to compete globally. And that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And these are the arenas that will lead to successful jobs for you and a successful economy for the United States of America. And science, exploration of space is the most inspiring for those kinds of jobs of any arena that we know of. So for us to remain a leader in space exploration and to use that, translate that into our ability to compete in the global economy is an extremely important aspect of what we do. It's also very important to our national security. But many, many things that you take for granted, your BlackBerry, your cell phone, your GPS, and your car, came as a result of the scientists who were inspired by the original space exploration. 40 years ago, when we walked on the moon, the majority of people that we know who are in engineering, math, and sciences now were inspired by that program. So that's a very important component of what we do. The other thing that we are looking to do now, because we are in a transition from the shuttle program to the next phase of our space exploration, is to ensure that we are able to take advantage of the highly skilled and very professional workforce that we have here at the Space Coast. And when I say the Space Coast, I'm not just talking about Brevard County, I'm talking about the entire district area and Central Florida area. And we know that we have a very highly skilled workforce here, one of the highest and most educated in the fields of engineering, frankly, per capita in the nation. This is a very important resource for us in this area, and our ability to keep those jobs and keep those highly skilled people in the community is very important. And how have we gone about trying to do that? As I said, every day I get up and say, how am I going to do that? One is to extend as long as we can the programs that we know are currently working. So you will see that in the next 2 months or so, or in November, there will be another shuttle launch, and in February there will be another shuttle launch. This is due to the extensions that we provided in the budget so that the shuttle can continue to launch and people can continue to go to work through the next 6 or 8 months. We also anticipate that there will be an additional launch which will come in June, and that's what we call the launch on need. That's in the House bill and the Senate bill and is proposed to happen. So this will continue the opportunities for that workforce to work on that exploration. That's very, very important. At the same time, we have been looking for ways in which we can diversify the economy of the Space Coast. And by that, I mean attract new businesses and new industries to the area. And one of the biggest areas of attracting interest there for us has been to look at alternative energies and ways in which we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, which we know have a finite resource for us, but also they contribute to pollution and so forth. So if you're looking to the future and you want to know, as I said, where the jobs are and where the future for you might be sure that you take a really close look at science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because those also are the arenas in which new technologies for the reduction of our carbon footprint will take place, but also it will create a whole new economy and will increase our abilities to remain safe in this world as we become energy independent going forward. We've also worked really hard to attract and encourage a whole bunch of small businesses because we know that's the growth area for providing jobs and new economy. So we've introduced a number of tax reductions, a number of opportunities for people to be successful in their small businesses in this community through small business incentives and other provisions that will help them to succeed and will allow them to continue to hire people. Now, at the moment, we are really at the crux of what will be the next phase of space exploration. As I said, we have worked hard to try to minimize the gap between the shuttle and whatever the next phase of space exploration is going to be. I've worked very hard to make that happen by ensuring that the shuttle flies until the manifest is done and hopefully adding that launch on need as we discussed. The other thing that we have worked very hard on is to ensure that we have opportunities in the Space Coast area for new businesses. As I said, the expansion of diversification of industries there. Now, at the moment, we are attempting to pass what is called the NASA reauthorization legislation. And there, as you know, probably through your political science courses, there's a bill in the Senate, there's a bill in the House. They are not exactly the same bill. I personally, did you all hear Senator Nelson talk this morning about the Senate version of the bill? Yes? Yes? Okay. And Senator Nelson and I have been working very, very closely to try to get those bills to move as closely together as they possibly can so that we can move forward with the next phase of space exploration in a very successful way. And that includes accelerating a NASA-led program that will allow us to move forward more quickly than we would have under the old trajectory with a NASA-led program for space exploration, specifically heavy lift out of low Earth orbit. And this is a very, very important component. Another part of what has been put into the bills, and again, we're getting them closer together, like Senator Nelson, I am completely hopeful that we will pass the Senate version of the bill this coming week, if it's at all possible to make those compromises happen. But the NASA-led launch, a NASA-led vehicle, is a very important part of what we're trying to do. The diversification of the economy here has been focused on by a team of cabinet-level members who have come down here and worked with Mr. Dibello and others to attempt to make sure that the community is aware of opportunities to start businesses and to employ people, and we've worked very hard on that component. The other thing that we are doing is ensuring that not only are the funds here for diversification and also for NASA-led, but that commercial industry, as far as space exploration goes, is located here at Kennedy Space Center. And this is the new era for space exploration. I think there's no question about it. We have seen commercial companies who have the ability to launch craft more quickly and cheaper than what we have been able to do. And so we are looking to ensure that the commercial development becomes very strong and is located here at Kennedy Space Center, because that attracts a number of companies and businesses to it that will be also great employers for you and for those that workforce that we have at the Kennedy Space Center already. So I thank you for the opportunity to participate in this program today. I'm sure I'll look forward to hearing what Mr. Dibello has to say about the partnership that we have with Space Florida and the state-level organization, and I'll look forward to your questions. Again, I thank you very much.
I'm going to take a little different approach on format. I'm going to use a few PowerPoints to give you some pictorial displays of why I believe the future of the space industry in Florida is very, very bright, and for that matter, for the nation as a whole. If I didn't use these, you'd have to watch me talk with my hands. I'm very Italian, and these pictures are a lot harder to understand. Senator Nelson quoted President Kennedy this morning, and I'll paraphrase that quote when he said that the future of space exploration is inevitable, whether we participate or not. We should all thank God that the President and the Congress at the time made the right decision, because it is not only inevitable, it is critical, essential that we participate in space, in fact, on a broader scale, lead in space. The leadership of global space exploration and making the investments required to do it is critical for our national security, for our national well-being economically, and because every time we make an investment in science and technology, there is an accrued benefit if we're smart about how we do it, which we should be able to bring back to the people of the country in every walk of life. And in fact, we've done that. The President and the Congress at the time made the same decision at the end of the Apollo program when they started the space shuttle and the space station, and now we're reaching the end of that major initiative. The problem that often happens when government is so heavily involved in major national programs, and it's a proper role of government to do the things that are difficult. National security is one of those. But as government advances technologies, it is more appropriate that commercial industry and the private sector take over. Whenever we are too dependent on major government programs, it's just a structural thing that when those programs come to an end, there is an inevitable hurt to the local community that is dependent on that flow of income. And we watched that happen at the end of Apollo. It certainly is happening today. So that if you look at this chart, this is Florida's challenge, managing through a transition where we're watching a significant, you've all heard the numbers, of 7,000 to 9,000 people who are direct shuttle workers who may lose their positions, with perhaps another 2 times that in terms of a secondary economic impact in the local community in terms of jobs lost. This picture, though, while it is a disproportionate hit to the state's space program, Florida will incur a larger hit than many other states. It has to be put in the context of the fact that Florida lost close to 500,000 jobs in the year prior. So we're part of a larger recession that has gone on that we are coming out of. But what's critical about the space industry is that the space industry has been a proven catalyst for enhancing the innovation, for driving the innovation that we all seek for the economy of tomorrow. So we have to manage our way through that transition. I'm going to try to use a few charts to paint the global marketplace. Space today is pervasive in our everyday lives. It's a horizontal industry that contains a little bit of electronics, IT, manufacturing, and every other major technology. It's a $260 billion business in the year 2008 and a $270-something billion business in the year 2009. What is significant to note is that in 1987, that was the first year in which the global revenues from commercial sources was much, much larger than the global revenues from governmental sources, even though space was the province of governments around the world. And in fact, today, that number has grown to 65-35 in favor of commercial. However, other nations have discovered space. So what you're looking at today is that this is a chart of all the global launches in 2009. And it shows that less than 1/3 of those global launches were on U.S. launch vehicles, which means that the rest of the world has developed capability. It's even more interesting when you look at that chart and look at and I realize this is a difficult to read chart, but what's intended is to show that many other nations, Iran, South Korea, North Korea, Japan, Brazil, many other countries have capabilities to launch, and that the marketplace is going to be increasingly competitive. The same thing is true when you look at the satellite industry. And in a two-year period from 2007 to 2009, there was a 46% increase in competition. The number of bidders and the number of players out there who were seeking to win satellite competition contracts. It's also important to note that even with a U.S.-built system like Iridium, which puts 66 satellites up into orbit to support mobile communications, as that company has looked to replace that constellation of satellites, the award for building those satellites was given to a French company. So that clearly other nations have discovered space, and other nations recognize the power of investments and driving their industry in space to drive their economies in the future. So where do we go, and why do I feel Florida's future is so bright? For very, very long, in this state especially, we have defined ourselves, we've defined the space industry by what's happening with NASA and what's happening with the Air Force. But the true picture is much, much larger than that. The future of space in Florida lies in diversification of the space industry across a broad array. So Space Florida today is focused on diversifying the industry and driving vertical integration of the supply chain. So we want breadth and we want depth. We're also strengthening the business environment so that Florida can have some competitive advantages in contrast to other states, especially when industry is looking to relocate its operations in the states that are best suited for its success. We're also not doing this alone. There is more of a sense of collaboration and partnership today among the state's agencies and the organization's private sector and public sector than there ever has been. So we're focusing on building key partnerships and trying to leverage the key R&D assets, most significant one that's noted by this university. And then finally, we're trying to drive the cost of space down, the cost of operations in space, and increasing the benefits of operating in Florida so that we can point out to the fact that a company can perform better if it is building its assets and its launch vehicles and its satellites close to the point of launch. There is a shorter supply chain and a lot of efficiencies that are built into the system. So it simply makes sense to do things in Florida. Where are we going, and what kinds of industries are we trying to drive? We've set a goal for the state to triple the size of the space industry in the state by the year 2020. That's a broad reach goal. But I believe we can do it by focusing on diversification across 10 market sectors that already have a significant Florida presence. What we're going to do is leverage our assets and really place emphasis on trying to grow them. The first three that you see on the left-hand side of that chart are our traditional businesses. And if you can't read them, I'll draw my picture. But the traditional launch industry was where we had our foundation. But we are also very, very interested in the stuff that goes on the pointy end of the rocket, satellites and payloads and research experiments, as well as we have a strong base of capability in the state to do all the ground support work that makes those things work in space and assists companies in making money using those assets. The other 7 sectors that you see on that chart cover the kinds of areas that Congresswoman Kosmas was referring to. It's agriculture and climate and environmental monitoring. These are 2 areas where space-based assets can drive tremendous efficiencies, either in growing more robust produce or crop product, or in doing precision farming using GPS so that we better apply our fertilizers and our nutrients and water, which is becoming a scarce resource. From space and using space assets, we can do a whole variety of wetlands monitoring and climate and environmental monitoring, and those services can be provided commercially or in support of other civil agencies. We are about to complete the International Space Station, and that is a $100 billion research laboratory in which 14 nations are participating in both operating it, building it, and driving research on it. We want to position Florida as the ground node for that International Space Station laboratory. We want to be able to provide the full range of services not only to a company, whether domestic or international, but to sovereign governments that have space ambitions and may not have the wherewithal to conduct their own research programs. But Florida has the researchers, Florida has the ability to help them think through their research program, design the hardware to conduct that research program, integrate that hardware into a payload, fly it, and then do both pre- and post-launch analysis of the results. So there is a significant amount of capability that is here in the state. Another area are what I call civil protection and emergency response. And there are a whole variety of applications of space-based assets to enhancing our ability to respond to emergencies. We should never go into a Haiti and not have communications, or into a post-tsunami area like Thailand and not have communications, or for that matter in New Orleans. And yet we have. And nothing beats a satellite for broadcast capabilities, and we are fast reaching the capability to put satellites up on demand for emergency response situations. We've already talked about communications and robotics, but I will tell you that the communications industry is the first industry that has figured out how to use some attribute of space to make money. They realized that by using the attribute of high upness, they were able to put something up there that allowed fixed satellite services, broadband satellite services, and a whole array of other capabilities. Clean energy and alternative fuels, we have a significant array of capabilities already in the state and a broad nexus of projects going on at the Kennedy Space Center, and we see that as a big part of our future. I'll fly through the rest of these charts. Clearly, diversifying our next generation launch activity is important to the state, and we have a number of projects underway to do that. And many of these will be to support commercial launch operations, both for civil agencies as well as for the commercial industry. We're establishing a network of statewide assets so that we're able to offer people who want to fly in Florida a network of capabilities as opposed to one launch site. And that's important for safety as well as for flexibility of operations when you're in a commercial launch frame. I've already talked to the idea of expanding our role in the International Space Station, and this is important for researchers in microgravity who want to use both microgravity and other characteristics of space to exploit to do biomedical and life sciences research. The satellite industry itself is one we will build in the state, and that includes everything from large satellites to small satellites the size of a small cube. And these things can be built and integrated here on demand, and we are looking at a variety of both industry-university partnerships to drive those. I think it's important that I'll highlight again that doing this through a family of partnerships, both with our traditional space players like the DoD, Air Force, and NASA, is important. We'll continue to strengthen those relationships. But by diversifying our industry, we're also diversifying our sources of funding. So partnerships with the FAA and Department of Energy and NIH for doing medical research and for doing a lot of the other kinds of research and commercial activity that we see is important so that we broaden the base of support for Florida's industry. We're also participating quite well with other states in building regional approaches to the development of industry. And then finally, I mentioned global industry are truly where our client base will be, including sovereign governments. I think the future of Florida is very bright. There is no reason in the world why we shouldn't continue to lead as a nation. It is imperative that we do that, not just for the survival of species, and I believe that's one of the big reasons why we want to drive space exploration. But it is also because in doing that, we learn a lot about ourselves, our place in the universe, and the ability to keep ourselves alive in hostile environments, which will flow back benefits, many, many benefits, to our economic well-being. With that, I'll close and hopefully leave some time available for questioning. Thank you.
It's been said that the economy is coming out of the recession now. The recession is pretty much over. In your opinion, is the space program going to help Florida and maybe possibly the rest of the states get out of this funk that we're in?
Either one of you? Congress?
I think there's no question that we have been focused for at least the last 20 months that I've been in office on attempting to save jobs and create jobs here at the Space Coast. And as I said, my efforts to minimize the gap between the transition from the shuttle program to the next phase of space exploration is has at its roots the opportunity for us to save the workforce and to continue to provide job opportunities for them through the next phase of space, through commercialization and diversification, and through new industries and small businesses. So there is no question that not only for the immediate, we have an opportunity based on the cabinet level task force that has come here with $40 million directed towards saving and creating jobs here in this area to use the Space Coast expertise, technology, and workforce to increase opportunities and minimize those economic downturns that we are going through.
Earlier in Bill Nelson's speech, he talked about a trip to Mars through, I believe it was plasma rockets, and one of the main reasons that I've heard over the news from President Obama and certain other sources is going to be that the main reason for this closing of NASA is going to be we can't afford it. It's not really viable for our money and the economy that we're in right now. Where's the funding for the project for the trip to Mars? Where's that going to be coming from?
Well,
Go ahead.
There are several things that we've got to comment on. That the historic program that we've had up to this point has been the operation of a shuttle system, which was a reusable system. And as a reusable system, it's incredibly labor intense because you have to turn it around every time you fly it. And its principal mission has been to go to low Earth orbit and help build the International Space Station. The future will use something that's more in the form of an expendable launch vehicle with some parts that may be reusable so that they can be turned around for efficiency. But in general, it'll be far less labor intense and therefore not as expensive to operate. That frees up money that can be poured into research and development and technology advancements. And exploration by its very nature pushes the edges of technology knowledge, which we, if we're smart, will figure out how to learn from and drive back into commercial applications, which benefits mankind and answers the question. The more we do this, the more small businesses we create, and that we will lift ourselves out of that job funk that you're referring to.
I just want to say that if there is a misperception that I think you used the word shutting down NASA, there is in no way any plan to shut down NASA or space exploration. We have known for many years that we were going to go through a transition from shuttle technology to other technology, as you described, that will take us beyond low Earth orbit. While, as you know, the administration proposed a freeze on every agency and government, NASA received an increase in the appropriated funds recommended, because there is a recognition that this provides, as I said before, for you, the next generation, not only inspiration, but opportunity for the 21st century jobs. So it's an investment in not only exploration, but in all that goes with it and the opportunities that it will provide for you as you become educated in those arenas and as we continue to participate in a global economy.
This question is particularly for Congresswoman Kosmas, but any of you can feel right to contribute. You mentioned specifically the growth of private sector involvement in the space program and how you thought it was a good thing. In this future arena where private and public sectors are going to be working together in the space industry, what roles do you think each of those sectors should have? I mean, especially when we're talking about not duplicating activities. For example, if the private sector is going to be launching their own rockets, what do you think the roles of each of those should be? Thank you.
Do you want to answer that?
Well, let me comment.
No, I don't mind answering it, but I think Mr. Dibello is, and I'd be happy to answer it.
I made the comment that it's important that government do the things that are very difficult or the proper role of government. So national defense is one of those. Pushing the edges of a major national initiative like going to the moon or, in my mind, going to Mars is truly the province of government. What we've done, though, we've realized that in building the space station, we have mastered the technologies associated with going back and forth to low Earth orbit. So it's entirely appropriate to turn that aspect of operations over to the private sector and let government step back and be a customer. And that is the way we handle the development of the aviation industry in this country and many other industries in this country. It's appropriate to do that today. One other comment that I might make, just to add on to the tail end of the question over here. In general, the U.S. spends less than 0.5% of its discretionary budget on space. We do spend more money on pizza and chewing gum in this country. So we get a hell of a lot more scientific bang for the buck and contribution back to the well-being of the American people from the investments that the government makes in science and technology, space being only one area. Go ahead.
I don't want to miss an opportunity to say go Creek and to thank you all for being here. I think, however, Mr. Dibello answered this quite clearly, that we believe that there are two tracks, both of which can be operating. Why we have moved in the legislation that we're proposing to advance and accelerate the development of a NASA-led vehicle that will go beyond low Earth orbit, and at the same time support commercial enterprises to do what we know that they are capable of doing in terms of, as a minimum, taking payloads to the International Space Station, which the life of which has been extended from an earlier date of 2015 now to 2020. So we need to have commercial do what we know they can do, and to be the ferrying source for the payloads to the International Space Station. At the same time, we're continuing to develop NASA-led.
I'm sure you guys are aware that UCF is a very involved university with the Kennedy Space Center and the NASA program. We have a very large engineering school. I'm wondering what the economic impact might be on UCF and NASA going forward in the next 10, 20 years.
I don't know that I have a numeric or quantitative answer to that. I can give you a qualitative answer. I think that when we get through this transition period, this period of political uncertainty, and hopefully we'll be through that soon, there'll be a concerted, sustained investment program in the next generation space activities, at least as far as the civil space program is concerned. But if you add then the benefits of that, because there'll be a lot of research and development, and I think UCF is well suited to participate in that. Part of our diversification strategy is the establishment of a number of research centers and institutes that will drive the development of industry clusters around them. And we expect a lot of university and small company partnership advancing technology that supports the space program. So I think that kind of activity will increase, as well as commercial industry by its very nature has tended to look to small companies and small company collaboration with universities to drive innovation And I think that we're going to see a lot of commercial activity growth as well for UCF and the other state universities.
Just to follow up on your question, when UCF was opened back in the 60s, it was open to service the Cape. It unfortunately picked the time just as the Apollo program shut down. So all the jobs that it was supposed to be supporting went away. On this next round, the university has the potential, because it now has the programs and resources in place, to benefit from when the economy starts back up and the commercial space activities in Florida begin to accelerate. That's why the university is interested in questions like the space program. It's not just a hypothetical, nice academic exercise, because we see ourselves as very much engaged, and that was the original purpose of the university. Most of you don't know this school was originally Florida Technological University. Changed its name in the late 70s because that we weren't doing that mission. We were doing a broader mission, and that's what we're continuing to try and do here. So,
this question is for Congresswoman Kosmas. What is the current status of funding for the Constellation program? And if it's being reduced or not funded at all, what do you think the impact on jobs and the economy will be on the space coast?
Well, as I said earlier, the current funding for NASA is at $19 billion, which is, as you say, less than 0.5% of our budget. And that is the level proposed in both the House bill and the Senate bill. Each bill has slightly different, though we're moving closer together, emphasis on slightly different things. The Senate legislation focuses on diversification through commercialization, which, as we've discussed, provides a whole new opportunity for those of you sitting in this room and for that workforce that we already have. It has also attached itself as the mechanism for ensuring that Kennedy Space Center is improved by in making it the launch facility of the world and of the nation going forward into the 21st century. And we have focused on continuing and accelerating, as I said, a NASA-led vehicle which will take us into low Earth orbit. Constellation, as you know, is a 5-year-old program on which we've spent $9 billion, and we haven't really accomplished our goals. So what we have attempted to do in our legislation is to take the information that we have known to be successful from Constellation and move it forward into these two other arenas that I just described. One being the next NASA-led vehicle that will take us beyond low Earth orbit, and the other to use parts of it, such as for the Orion capsule, to be partners with commercial opportunities if that works out to be the case. So we are moving in a direction that may or may not be called Constellation. I don't think the naming of it is important. The fact that we have identified a way to accelerate the development of a NASA-led vehicle that will take us beyond low Earth orbit and reduce the gap from the transition on the shuttle to that next vehicle is what's more important, frankly, than the name of the vehicle.
Mr. Dibello, given the fact that often politicians mobilize a little more strenuously when their constituents face at least a perceived threat, or they can perhaps take cover under those circumstances a little better. Given the fact that we have at least a concrete threat of near-Earth objects, I know that some of this is planned. We could possibly land on asteroids, which we've actually, maybe with manned spaceflight, find ways to be able to either deflect or destroy the objects that threaten the Earth. I think we could all get on board with the fact that we'd rather not have a cataclysmic event. And would it not make more sense to emphasize the synergy between that attempt, those exploits, and also our ideas to go to Mars just in exploration, because we all know we really do have a threat from the possibility of that happening?
Well, I'll comment. It's not only the possibility, it is a very real concern. And I think in the next decade or two, you're going to hear a lot more discussion, and scientific discussion in particular, about the possibility of a near-Earth object colliding with Earth. And whether we're talking 50 years or 100 years out, now is the time to be preparing that. The thing that will prepare though, is moving our exploration initiatives well beyond low Earth orbit. So whether we're going back to the moon as a precursor to other places, whether we develop the technologies to land and exploit perhaps what may be on a near Earth, like an asteroid, or driving all the way to Mars, the development of those technologies is going to be important for our ability to defend the planet should we face such the possibility of a collision. And then the other thing is far out systems that can measure what's coming and see what's coming, because it's much, much easier to move it when it's pretty far out rather than waiting till it's closer to Earth.